Welcome to the Learning Boost. The Learning Boost is a UC San Diego virtual series of talks introducing you to leaders, dreamers, innovators, and change champions. The series is designed to inspire you with ideas that matter to you and your world, one talk at a time. Today's talk is titled Culture Eats Strategy for Breakfast. I'm Karen Monroe with Staff Learning and Development, and I will be your host for the session. Our featured speaker today is none other than Mojgan Amini from UC San Diego. Thank you for joining us live. We really appreciate you taking time out of your busy day to be here. We do invite you to add your questions and comments in the chat. We will also have time for questions and answers toward the end of the presentation. If you happen to be watching the recorded version on YouTube and want more content, then please click the like button and subscribe to the channel. Now I would like to introduce you to our featured speaker, Mojgan Amini. Mojgan has worked for UC San Diego for 17 years and is currently the Director of Process Management and Continuous Improvement in IT Services. She oversees the Project Portfolio Management Office, the Continuous Improvement Program, Proactive Service Management, Communications and Outreach, and Organizational Change Management. Mojgan holds a master's degree in computer science and a Lean Six Sigma Black Belt. So a very warm welcome to Mojgan, and I will turn it over to you.
Thank you very much, Karen, for that welcoming introduction. I'll just go ahead and share my screen and we can get started. So as Karen mentioned, my talk today is called Culture Eats Strategy for Breakfast. And, you know, it's almost lunchtime, so let's whet your appetite a little bit with this talk. Thank you for the introduction, Karen. And let me make sure I can organize my screens before I get going here so that I don't jump around too much. So I'm going to go ahead and jump right in. Here are the topics that we'll be covering today. And the talk is basically divided into two sections. One is a little bit of research I did about what is culture really and why is it important? So I'll be sharing that to set the groundwork. And then I'll get into what that looks like. It's a little case study in my own department. So what does that look like here in my department, IT services? How did we get here? Kind of like, what did we think about to establish a culture? As Karen mentioned, feel free to chime in along the way. If you have questions, pop them in the chat. I'll rely on Karen to stop me or interrupt me. And if you want to speak out, please go ahead and raise your hand and we can get you on that, unmuted as well. So be very interactive if you wish it to be, and QA, there'll be plenty of time. I'll leave at the end if you want to have further discussions or other questions come up. So that's kind of what this 50 minutes or so will look like today. Wanted to get going with this quote from a professor at Harvard Business School, Howard Stevenson. Just to make kind of an impact. Maintaining an effective culture is so important that in fact trumps even strategy. I don't know how you all feel about that, because I know even with the Learning Boost series, we've had great presentations on setting a strategic vision and how important strategy is, et cetera. And here I am, I'm saying, yeah, culture is more important. But honestly, the reality is culture and strategy really go hand in hand, they interact. And ideally, they are mutually reinforcing. That's what makes it really powerful. What is culture? I like to think of it as, culture takes over when the CEO leaves the room, or in my case, the CIO leaves the room. It's really universally, culture is about the employees. It's about making sure they have a pleasant and productive working environment. And why is culture so important? It's really like the fabric of your organization. It's the emotions that people feel. yes, it's important to have objectives, your goals, your vision, your mission, etc. But what weaves it all together is this concept of culture. Think of it as where the employee handbook leaves off. What do you do after that? You and your team, you're all making hundreds of decisions every day on a daily basis. And culture is there to help us easily make those decisions. It guides us. It puts us in a place where we know what to do. It's just all around us. It's a feeling. It's what's all around us. So that's a little bit of a description from my perspective. And what I've seen out there when I did my research is organizations with highly effective service cultures and cultures in general exhibit what I categorize as the 3 C's. So C number 1, clarity. There's the vision is there, it's painted from the top, it's clear. This is what we want the culture of our organization to look like, and let's build on that. C number 2 is communication. Okay, now that we painted a vision, let's reinforce it, let's reiterate it, let's communicate the heck out of it. That's communication. C number 3 is consistency. Yes, it's important to paint that vision and get the word out and reiterate, but what's also important is to stop those things that don't align with the culture. We want to root out the misalignment. So 3 C's: clarity, paint the vision; communication, communicate the heck out of it; consistency, stop those things that don't align. And culture is not easy to get right. I just want to put that out there. It's not something that happens overnight. It takes planting seeds and really nurturing it to happen. So even though it's categorized, I just want to mention that. So here we go. Here is a place where you can interact. Do you know the answer to this question? Which organization out there has a culture of rapid innovation as well as secrecy? So a couple might come to your mind, but I'm looking for one particular one where this is woven into their culture. Let's see, I see, Galen. Galen was the first one I saw. There are other ones come up too. Yeah, I hear Amazon a lot, etc. Apple, okay. So Apple wove this in from the very beginning. I mean, it was established when Steve Jobs was there, but it lives on today. They internally create an environment where there's a lot of creative, strategic thinking, innovation. They create pods for that, opportunities for that, empower that to happen, and then make sure that they do have that level of secrecy within their company, because they want to, I don't know, like big bang reveal, but that is a company culture that they have. So let's try this next one. Okay, ready? Which retail organization's culture is centered around providing customers with the best possible service? I see Walmart, Macy's, Nordstrom. Okay, I was going to prompt you, Walmart or Nordstrom. It is Nordstrom. Nordstrom, it's from day one to today, it's all over the place. So every Nordstrom employee, whether they work on the sales floor or not, they are empowered and they're really focused on making people feel good, regardless of where they are in the organization. And their culture is centered around creating this environment where their staff, their people feel supported, empowered. They're kind of like running a little portion of the company. That's like they own that company, so that when they're with customers or others, they feel that way. It's posted all over their staff rooms in the back, etc. So, you got some of those right, so great. Here's some other businesses that I kind of looked around and saw that they really nailed their company culture. These ones stood out for me. And some I have personal experience with. So before I started here at UC San Diego, I used to work at Cirque du Soleil in the IT department. So
who knew Cirque du Soleil had an IT department? That was fascinating.
Sell the tickets. So it is fascinating because creativity is embedded in everywhere you look there. So I went to the corporate center, a corporate location in Montreal, walk down the halls, it's just creativity oozing from the walls. It's all around. There's costumes, there's people walking around, you can peek in, there's a lot happening. Even when I was meeting with my IT colleagues, or even the accountants, no offense to accountants, but when we were gathering together talking, I heard them talking about the employee art exhibit that is going to happen in a couple of weeks and what they're going to show there. And so like everyone is kind of part of that creativity culture. So that's a personal experience. I had a friend who worked at Disney, and their culture internally is happiness and creating magic. And you'll see that a lot of these ones that I picked out, it's not just their internal company culture, it's just like bleeds out. It's what we see as well out there. So Disney's all about happiness and creating magic. She told me you gotta really love being around very happy people if you wanna work there. That's what it looks like. So Twitter started all about transparency. Every employee has a voice, everyone is heard. It's really open, transparent. We'll see what the future of Twitter looks like as we go forward, but that's what they're based on. Nike, we see it outward facing. It's about pushing your limits. So this is what they do internally with their employees, push the limit, uncover potentials, really get out of your comfort zone and grow. And then Zappos, who knows what Zappos does? Anybody? I see shoes. All right, Zappos does sell shoes. They do have some clothing too. They are an online retailer, but if you ask them what they do, what that company does, Galen, great return policy. Yes, we're getting closer. So yes, Manisha got it. If you ask them what their company does, it's all about the very best customer service and the very best customer experience. There's no mention of shoes. There's no mention of online retail. They just happen to do that as well. But Zappos was an interesting company because they focus so hard on culture that they established their own, they published their own book about it. They have large publications. They wove it into training, onboarding. They even have an annual conference. They have, multiple times a year, they have a conference where people outside from any company or anyone can come in and see. It's all about their culture. They post these 10 top core values all over the place. They recruit people. They offer employees, that they had just hired $2,000 after the first week if they want to leave. If you want to leave, if you don't fit in well here's $2,000 for you. You can go. So that is really built into everything they do there. And then here's an interesting case study that I pulled up. So the founder of Tom's Shoes, Blake Mykowski. So he, and hopefully you're familiar with Tom's Shoes. So we're talking about shoes here a little bit, but he looked back and said, when I was a business MBA student, if I would have put this proposal forward for the company I have today, that we're gonna, for every pair of shoes we sell, we're gonna give one away, I probably would have flunked out of business school. But he went forward with that global service provider culture and intention. And then, again, it wasn't about the shoes, it was about servicing, providing a global service to underprivileged areas. And Tom's Shoes has become this cultural icon. It's creating a level of success that would never have been attained if it was just about strategy alone. Because what has happened, you put the emotional part out there, and the people who work for that company are really aligned and rally behind that concept. And so it's now we have, celebrities wearing the shoes because they want that, be part of that emotional feel, and that providing, because of the message they're doing this. And then Tom's is getting free advertising because of that. So anyway, as you can see, it all goes hand in hand. Once you start at the core, it really blossoms from there. So those are kind of some of the background information that I dug up on why culture is so important. And now I wanted to shift into, what did we do here in our department, IT services? So going that way, and a lot of us maybe can relate to this because we're all part of UC San Diego. It isn't a Tom's Shoes or anything like that, but University of California has its own prestige. It's a world-class public university, public research university system. And honestly, if you look at the UCOP website or University of California website and look for, what they tout as their kind of underlying, I want to call it a culture or what the environment looks like. So it is the only world-class public research university for, by, and of California. We are one of the largest employers in California with more than 227,000 people in jobs that span the spectrum of occupations. UC is made up of passionate people serving a greater good. That's UC. This is kind of, I'm reading these things from the website. So every faculty and staff member plays an important role in the university. UC works hard to be a good employer, make UC a place where people enjoy what they do and are rewarded for their contributions. Other things that stand out, is a commitment to a diverse community and an opportunity to work with some of the brightest and most visionary thinkers of our time. So that in and of itself, it kind of brings on the sense of pride. I want to be part of that. So now we go to UC San Diego. UC San Diego is a part of this world-class system. It is in and of itself a world-class university with its impactful mission, strategy, not to mention the desirable location. I mean, all of that plays into it. So most of us are here at UC San Diego because of the mission. We want to be part of creating these amazing things. We want to be part of these discoveries and teaching and impact and improving people's lives. So as a campus, UC San Diego is relatively young, but it has this culture of making big waves. It has appetite for taking risks, pushing the boundaries on research, on how we educate students, etc. So that's kind of like what it's standing itself up to be. And so where do we go from that? I work in the IT department, IT services. We do exciting things. We're part of the mission. We're helping the mission. I'm not saying that we're as aligned with this big risk-taking message that, we are risk takers in the IT department, but we did have a really good opportunity to stand back and really establish our culture. And here's why we had that opportunity here in our department. So about 5-6 years ago, I can't believe it's been that many years already. It seems like just yesterday, we had IT services was born. Before that, there was no IT services. There were different multiple IT units, and there was a opportunity to kind of unify and bring together those units. So that's what happened about 6 years ago, where several units came together. And just imagine 10 or so units with their own 10 or so cultures, with their own 10 or so ways of doing things all coming together. And then about 6 months later, a brand new leader for that organization was brought in. So the new CIO at that time, Dr. Vince Kellen, who is our campus CIO, was brought in to lead this organization. With him, he brought his own vision. Luckily, we all had a chance to stop and say, like, what do we need to do here? What is essential for our organization, given the circumstances? We need to focus on the people. We need to make sure folks are engaged, they're coming together from different areas. The excitement about what we do and how we do it, that needs to be up front. change is hard. We need to acknowledge that everybody is just going through changes with who they're working with and what their job is looking like. So we need to put that up front and center as well. And we want to really grab this opportunity we're handed to set groundwork. What is our culture going to look like? So what we did was, we got in a room and we're like, okay, what are those guiding principles? What are the guiding principles we want to focus on for our situation right here to establish our culture? So luckily we had set a vision and a mission statement. It's on our website, its.ucsd.edu, aligns really well with the UC San Diego mission. So wanted to, anything we do with setting culture, to make sure we align with that. We're part of this great university, make sure that's a big part of it. We wanted to build a brand that employees can proudly stand behind. We're part of this bigger entity now, and I'm proud of it. Make sure there's a comfortable place for open communication. We wanted to make sure we can ignite and align people's passions. They were doing different things, find the right place for everyone where it aligns with your passion, and instill a sense of value and belonging in the organization. We're all an important part of this organization, and recognizing, appreciating, celebrating employees. Some of the things I'm saying, it can apply to any organization or any department, but this is what was important for us at that time. And we want to make sure we acknowledged and we documented it so that we can establish that as our foundation. We wanted to foster a learning and growth mindset, because we saw ITS as, here's just the beginning, it's going to grow into the future, and make work an enjoyable place. And by coming up with this list of guiding principles, we could basically take that and really hone in what we want to come up with our organization's values. So it was very deliberate. We didn't just say, oh, we want to make this a fun place to work. We really honed in. And so we took this list and we got in a room and we brainstormed and scribbled things on the wall. And we came up with these 4 values to work and live by for all staff. They can embody this. So 4 categories, not too many things to remember. And we tried to come up with a way that when you read these, you feel like, yes, I'm part of this organization. It aligns well with my thinking. So I'll go into each one of these because I think it's important for our organization. And what we did after that, we made a shiny card out of it, and we made sure everyone had one. They had, obviously at that point in time, a lot of us were in the office, and it was on the walls and cubicles, and every new employee got one in their bag, in their welcome bag. And it was just something people recognized and knew, etc. And each one of these areas, let me just tell you really quickly, so you know where we are with it. So we're better together was all about working together. So we working together within the department, across units, working together across the campus, working together across the UC system where needed. So it was all about, we're greater than the sum of our parts. We embrace that we just came together. We're going to get away from, I used to do things this way, and embrace working together. So that was that particular pillar. The next one was think like an entrepreneur. So we wanted to make sure people felt empowered to do what it takes to solve problems, to get past hurdles, to get the information they need. They didn't need to worry about the org structure and let me go up the chain of commands in order to talk to someone over there. Go get what you need, feel like you can get it done. It's all about innovation, continuous improvement, and being effective in what you do. So that was think like an entrepreneur. The next one is make a difference with a happy face. So it's about customer service, leaving folks with a smile on their face, thinking ahead for customer needs, just aiming for that for that smile, because IT services has services in its name, and we provide a lot of services out to the general audience. And last but not least, certainly not least, is love what you do. We want to make sure, again, to find people's passions and skills and match them to the needs of the organization. That will pave our way to success and enjoyment. So that was the fourth one. And here it is. Here's what it looks like, the card, holding it in our hands and taking it with us. So that was our starting point. Beyond that, I mentioned this earlier, culture doesn't happen overnight. It was all about planting lots of seeds and seeing what grew. Planting lots of efforts and activities and initiatives. And I'm gonna just quickly show these bullet items and then we can stop and talk about some of them. So ask me anything. There was a lot of information to share. Remote work. I know remote work is a very common thing now, but it wasn't as much way back when, but we embraced it early on. Open office concept where people can just go find who they needed and collaborate. We live in a beautiful environment, geographical environment. Let's have walking meetings, get out of the office. And now today, get out of, behind Zoom. We have open office hours for certain areas of our organization, make sure people can get connected to people and information. This concept of discipline freeing us. Okay, so might be a confusing bullet. So we put together standard practices, certain things that we wanted to make sure we got out of the way, that people didn't have to reinvent the wheel. So how do we measure, keep metrics for certain service areas here, make sure we do that. How do we keep track of project success and intake and prioritization? Here's a mechanism for that. How do we keep track of who's working on what and what bandwidth looks like, and making sure people are not overworked. We have time tracking standards for that. So that's what I mean to put standards in place with discipline so that it opens up opportunity to work on other things. We have something called an after action review, which is all about not pointing fingers when things go down. It's about finding root causes and making things better for the future of our services. Bringing people in, recruitment is always, it's really hot right now, but it's always been hot. How do we get the best people and keep the best people? Making this a place for everyone. Bringing in high schoolers for exposure to what their career could look like. Bringing in maybe somebody who was on maternity leave and has started a family and took a few years off and now wants to get back into work environment. Figuring out places for everyone. We have help wanted. So if there's within our organization, so if somebody needs a special skill for a couple of months, we can borrow from our own department. We have podcasts and what we call snippets of our lives, because just like you all, we've been mostly remote for the past few years, and we have brought in new people and they need to get to know each other. So we have ways of connecting them that way and personally getting to know each other. We have a leadership program that we started. I think we're in cohort 5, if not getting near 6. So we started way back early, and some of these are programs that took deep root and have grown into big trees. This is one of them. And so anybody in the organization, regardless of if you're an entry-level independent contributor to a leader or supervisor, anybody can throw their hat in and apply to be part of the leadership program cohort and get the benefits of growth. We have something called Focus Day. So we were very pleased when, as a campus, UC San Diego decided to honor meeting free and Zoom free Friday afternoons. This was amazing. We took one more step. So once a month, we have some of the units, not all of them, have this Focus Day concept where we shut off our notifications and our email for that particular day. For the month, we come up with things that require deep thinking and strategizing and focus, and really work on those without getting distracted. We meet at the end of the day, discuss what was done. This thing called passion inventory, which I have a separate slide for because I thought that was a unique thing. And then last but not least, continuous improvement all over the place in our organization. I'm going to
Mojgan,
pause.
if I could,
Yes.
sorry, if I could interrupt for just a moment, there's some interest in the chat about the office hours. Where would folks find that information?
That's a great question, because we really promoted it internally to our department for office hours. So we have an intranet and we post every single office hour in community of practice. However, I would venture to guess that these could be open to others as well. So because of this question, for IT services, we have our internal, intranet, what we call it, with all the information, et cetera, that's relevant to the staff. And then we have our ITS website, which is its.ucsd.edu. It has our vision and mission if you click on the about. So what I'm going to do with this interest is to talk to the folks, the various areas that do office hours, and see if we can get them posted, because it is a place to come in and you learn about the people, but you learn about what's going on as well. I know some areas also have kind of like office hours through mechanisms like Teams or Slack, where they say, okay, this time, this week, here we're all going to be, this team's all going to be there, and then we could do that remotely. But these office hours are on Zoom. So thank you for stopping me, and that gives me an action item to push that out there.
Right, thank you.
Thank you. Anything else? I'm going to pause on this slide, but anything else come to people's minds from what I rattled off so quickly? All right. So the one thing I mentioned was this concept of passion inventory. We did this early on, and when I was putting these slides together, it reminded me that we should probably do it again, because it's been a few years. So what was this was interesting, because I said, as I said, we wanted to make sure we align the needs of the organization with the skill of a person and their passion. And so all those three together, finding that sweet spot. So we didn't just say it, we actually brought in a facilitator, and we started with our managers and supervisors. We got them in a room and we did these exercises, and we had questionnaires, but we did have role-playing exercises to really find out what people were passionate about in their personal lives even, and how it relates to work and what they're working on. And give people the space to think about it, because we're all running so fast. We don't stop and think. Like I remember one of our staff members said, I like to organize things at home. It's all about, the beautiful organized garage or the closet or those systems you have, and there's no like crazy junk drawer, etc. And so they were really passionate about that. And then we found out that aligns really well with something like project management, where you got to keep all the tasks organized and who's doing what, and closing out completed action items and things like that. So it was really interesting to make those kinds of connections. And we like I said, we started with the managers, supervisors, and then we took that to the next level, where we encouraged them to do this exercise with their staff, because that's the relationship they already have. And so some things came out of that were unexpected. So we did have one of the supervisors kind of did this exercise with their staff members. We found a team, a team that worked well together. And so one of the employees was all about wanting to have more outward facing role. Like their role was very technical, inward facing, and they wanted to be with customers. And the person that was with the customers really wanted to do the other way. And there was enough overlap in kind of what they were doing and how they were doing things. We were able to identify that and make changes and kind of do job sharing, where Now they're both very happy, the service is flourishing, etc. So we saw some immediate results. Anyway, that was one thing I thought was interesting that we worked on. I mentioned continuous improvement. If you don't know, but IT services is all about continuous improvement. That's a big part of the culture. And there is leadership support from the top. I can honestly say that, those 3 C's that we talked about really get exercised here with this. We actually require every new staff member that joins our department to go through Lean Six Sigma training. So we carve out, they come on board and we schedule them for the next available training. So we have to date 567 yellow belts trained, 59 green belts trained. I don't want to say require, but highly recommend our service owners. Those are providing key services to the university to get their green belts, because we want to always improve our services and continually look for a plan to do that. So a green belt for our service owners, and then black belt for those who have critical roles or want to go beyond, or they have large programs they manage. So we have 12 black belts in our organization, which is phenomenal. And when we were in person, we made a big deal. We had a party, we had cupcakes, we had our CIO come and recognize. We had pins and bling and ribbons and things like that. So and to this day, we keep the continual recognition and celebration going. We have quarterly all hands for our organization. We celebrate those recent graduates, give them the stage to talk about the improvement project that they did. We have internal scholarships. We have coaching from those who do have the certification. And it's built into everything we do, even with, when a service goes down, and you've probably experienced this, you're in the middle of something and you can't log into X website, something went down, it's an emergency on our end, people are scrambling, etc. First thing is to resolve the issue, obviously restore the service, but immediately after that, for any major incidents, you don't see this, it happens behind the scenes. We do something called an after action review, which is really a little mini Lean Six Sigma project. What was the problem statement? What were the causes or contributing factors? What can we do? We drill down, we do a Ishikawa diagram. What can we do to avoid this happening again? What are the commonalities with other major incidents? So just to let you know, we really take this to the next level. So I'm going to stop there for the seeds we plant and wrap up the presentation so we can have an opportunity to discuss further if you'd like. So this was an interesting statement I want to put out there. So your bottom line next year will largely be determined by your current strategies. Your bottom line in the following years will be more influenced by your current culture. So think about that. What is, if somebody were to ask you, what is your current culture? What is your organization's culture? What would you respond? And if you know from the top of your head, go ahead and chime in, but it's something you can take away with you. Your organization has a strategic plan, but do you have a culture plan? And I'd like to just stop sharing, and I could see if we want to have any further discussions on anything we learned. And I could jump back into the slides if need be, but I'll stop sharing right now.
Thanks, Mojgan. So if folks have additional questions that they'd like to ask, please feel free to enter them into the chat. But you can also take yourself off mute if you prefer to ask your question that way. Mojgan, do you have any tips for those that want to get started in terms of how to figure out what the right seeds are to plant within their own smaller organization?
Sure. And it might be easier in their smaller organization. I say it is very unique and custom to not just the organization, but the situation at hand. So the organization may be grappling with certain things and they want to make sure that that's what they focus on. So I would say it's kind of, I liked the steps we took, and it could be scaled to the organization. So really stopping and saying, we want to establish a culture. That's number one step, because again, as I mentioned, strategy it's important. It's a little bit easier to do because we're looking at the bottom line. You know, what does our organization do? We provide services. Let's make sure our turnaround time is, you know, X many percent more efficient next year. You put very specific goals in place. But culture is first step. Just acknowledge with leadership that it is time to really proactively intentionally set some kind of seeds for culture in our organization. Step number one. Step number two is look at the state of your organization. What are the things you want to focus on? Is it about connecting people? People are all over the place right now. We want to make sure they're engaged and feel part of a unified team. Is it about, what is it about? Is it about pushing people? Is it like the Nike thing, or is it about the Tom's thing? They're very different, right? What resonates with your organization? And then brainstorming and getting some of the leaders and some of the others who might have creative thought processes, may not be in the leadership team, but like can spur creativity to happen. Just getting them in one place on Zoom or wherever, and just, sticky notes, whatever it takes to just let the ideas flow, just not worrying about what the end result's going to look like. What's missing, what would be nice, what have you seen somewhere else in a neighboring organization that you can adopt and bring forward? Get those going. And you'll see once you start that, they start grouping into like concepts. And from there, you can kind of take it to the next step. It is a lot of kind of refining ideas and grabbing ideas and refining it. And then at some point, honestly, it feels like it clicks. Oh, those things make sense together. It clicks. And then it turns into the 3 C's. Make sure, that vision for the culture is clearly painted. We did our brainstorm homework. Now let's get the word out. Paint it, make sure that from the top is engaged and on board. Get the word out. We use little card. You can use whatever, get the word out, and then reinforce and nurture what you do. Get rid of pick the weeds, water the plants. Get the weeds out of the way. I don't know if that's high level, but I feel like it's so unique to the organization.
Gotcha. There is a question in the chat about did you experience pushback when implementing?
I wouldn't call it pushback. That's a great question. I would call it with any change, there is kind of this change resistance or uncomfortableness with doing things differently. So that's going to be there. That's change management. So upfront, we actually did put a lot of our frontline supervisors or managers and leaders through formal change management training. ProSci, ADCAR, way back when. We put folks through change management training because we knew there was going to be these, resistance and, just uncomfortable feeling about doing things differently from the staff. We were lucky in that we were able to align from a higher level executive or leadership level where we were on board. Yes, we want to do this. We want to make it succeed. It's a new organization. We want it to be successful. So I think change management is going to be there. we had we did have pushback in all sorts of in pretty much everything we did. So we're moving into an open office concept so people can collaborate together. Probably 80% of the people didn't want to do that, our staff members. We had surveys, we had outreach, we had, you know, change management to an extreme, like here's what your desk is going to look like. But once we rallied behind the benefits and what's in it for me, and we actually did it, and people got in the room, honestly, within a week, we had zero complaints. People were just loved that, you know, we had all open view of the Torrey Pines, and people were staying late, chit-chatting, and it just, you know, so it's a matter of expecting pushback. And I think what's important is the high level support from the top level support.
Thank you. Carlisle has a question. Carlisle?
Yes, thank you. I'm Carlisle. I am working on the UCSD health side of the house. And I had a question related to, you had mentioned briefly when it comes to like an operational strategic plan, you know, it's easier from like a KPI standpoint, you know, more black and white. And what I'm experiencing is this notion that efforts put toward culture change don't make money. And I know, and maybe, okay, I don't have data to support it, but I know in like my heart of hearts, you have people who walk into work that are thoroughly engaged. The work itself sustains itself. They're coming in and doing the work for you. It's not top down telling you what to do. But I guess, you know, like I understand the grind of getting leadership support, but I guess what is your experience with the types of messaging or the ways in which you can kind of craft the story to which it does click? Because I think this is a huge barrier of, if it's all about the bottom line,
Yes.
how do you actually convey the dollars?
Carla, that's an excellent question. I mentioned, I think several times, for a holistic, you know, organizational wide culture and, you know, painting that vision, we need the top level support and understanding, etc. Okay, so what happens when you don't have that? I mean, you can't force it to happen. So I would say I 100% agree. I mean, we see it in action. It's hard to quantify what, you know, a good work environment, all of the benefits it brings, all of the productivity gains it brings, the, you know, the long-term commitment of staff because they like what they're doing or they see a growth path, all of that behind the scenes, it is a complementary benefit that you can't put a dollar number on. I mean, you could if you really wanted to. Oh, look, we retained this way and we didn't spend this much money. We did cost avoidance of this many, you know, millions of dollars because we didn't have to recruit people and, you know, turnover and all that. But that takes effort. And I'm not sure if that gives you what you need. So I would say there is, you know, on the other end of the spectrum, there is a way to have, and we did have this for a while, like, and we still do it, because we're a large organization. What, you know, we call micro cultures. You know, there's little cultures, grassroots, these teams gel really well. And you probably have this there as well. It's the certain teams are highly productive. They're enjoying work. They gel really well together. They have their own little culture going on. They have gatherings and things like that. It's okay, you know, and looking for those and really showing the value that those things bring, those microcultures maybe are attributing to benefit or higher productivity and things like that. But it does take a champion and it does take influence to higher level to be able to point that out. I don't disagree that it's complex to try to, you know, get the top level vision when it's not there, or top level support when it's not there. I would say look for where it is there and nurture what is there. Maybe encourage folks to learn from each other. Maybe it creates a critical mass, and there is part of that going on. And the thing about culture is it takes years, and some parts of it die out and some remain. So that's the other thing. Like, you can't show, oh, look, I said I was going to do this, and 6 months later, here's that. It takes years to establish.
Makes sense. And I think it also speaks to like the degree of trust you're willing to have toward an endeavor that is so big, that will take a long time without hard numbers to support it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Sometimes you just got to do some parts and then show the numbers. Because I remember with continuous improvement, even like, we still have to do this. The outcomes of a process improvement initiative is similar to that, because nobody wants to change their process. You're telling somebody their process is broken, prove it. And then you got to go quantify that. And you can't quantify it unless you change the process, then measure it and wait, a year or more. So that's the same thing. A lot of pushback when we were trying to do that in certain areas. And what we had to do is just the areas that were open to it, do it, measure, really, fact-based, no, emotions. I think this is going to be better for people. Fact-based data, bring that to the table. Then it opens people's eyes. Then they're like, oh, the next group. And then it becomes kind of like the people that are on the fence get on board, and it becomes bigger. So that's another way to do it. Look for that. Just be willing to commit to a longer term turnaround and gathering of data, and then but have a mechanism for the data to go up. At some point, it may trigger things to kind of tip over in a good way.
Yeah, thank you.
No, thank you. Other thoughts?
Still have a few more minutes if folks want to ask questions.
So I have another question if no one else wants to.
Go for it. Go for it.
So part of my thought process has been a little bit like obsessed on psychological safety. Because, I think with a lot of just change in general, there needs to be an open dialogue. And I guess I wanted your take on your view of like the importance of it, the necessity of it, and if it is something that if that is groundwork that needs to be put in place in order for, I guess, broader change to happen.
I think, yes, there needs to be, a commitment and groundwork and recognition of it to begin with, acknowledging that we need that and it's important. And at the same time, I think, again, kind of the concept of microcultures, let things happen in certain areas. So, and identify what is the need. So there's two ways. One, we know people are going through, some things are obvious. You don't have to go do a survey and get numbers and then come up with a plan. But people are going through a lot. People have changes in their personal lives. There's, juggling with kids and jobs and then all the changes at work. Pandemic, global pandemic, and now the next thing, who knows what the next thing is, and all those. We already know that. We need a safe place. We know things about equity, inclusion, diversity issues that there's a lot of complexity out there that we already know about. So I would say if we already know about certain things, let's put something in place with those who care about it. So in our organization, we're like 500 people in our organization. There's a group of people who put together this diversity inclusion monthly gatherings. And I'm not saying every single person in our organization is there and in the discussion, but at least it was critical enough for some people to put that together. And now, those other people who were on the fence are now hearing about it or joining in. It's about open conversation, having a safe place to talk and knowing that it is safe, sharing, etc. And so that's one thing. It could happen, it could blossom, right, individually. And then the other thing is having a way to just listen to people. So we, in a, I guess, a bigger scope. So we kept our Ask Me Anything sessions going for our organization, in addition to all hands and manager meetings that happen. So Ask Me Anything, people can submit any question they want without their name being attached to it, or they can raise their hand right there on the spot and ask. And it just comes out. These are things that are on people's minds, and we want to be able to address it. So it's an open forum to, hear about that and address that. I'm not sure if that's in line with what you were, totally asking, but I think it's a combination of getting people who are gung-ho about it to plant those seeds, and then having opportunities for safe and open dialogue.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's almost as though it's like an understanding that there isn't a single right way, but maybe the important piece is connecting the various ways to see that they're not actually alone and by themselves.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
There was a question in the chat about whether the presentation deck would be available afterwards. Is that something that I'd be able to share with participants?
Absolutely. And yes, and then the last slide that I didn't show had links to all the references where I dug up information.
Okay, so we'll send that along to those of you on the call today. So thank you, Mojgan.
Absolutely. Thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah. And last call, anything else? All right, I'm going to put a link